I think it's natural that most of us have lists of things we want to do. I think it's natural that we have things we want to get done. You'll say, okay, well, I want to get these things done by the time I'm 25, or I want to get these things done next summer. I want to get these things done over the winter. I want to get these things done at work. I want to get these things done with my romantic life. I want to get these things done with my family. I want to get these things done with myself, right? I think it's natural for some of us to have lists and to have multiple lists running at once for the same thing, right? So you could say, well, I've got I got my short-term goals, my medium-term goals, and my long-term goals, right? So those are basically three lists that are in flux as we speak. I think what can happen in that situation is that you can get locked in that list to say, okay, I'm operating in an A B perspective. I'm operating in a linear perspective. I'm looking at this 2D. That I've got a list of things I'm trying to get done, and that's all I'm thinking about. And I think it's important to know when to do that, especially if you're trying to get a task done. It is important to turn off the noise and just to focus on what you need to get done. I think that's very important. But I also think it's important to know when to pull back. It's important to say, okay, let me step away from that list and let me objectively look at it. Got an invisible piece of paper in front of me. And to say, okay, is this list still relevant? Is this list still applicable? Should this list occupy any time and space in my day? Is anything on this list still meaningful? That's a skill you got to know when to harness. You've got to know when to get your hands in the pot, start stirring it up. You've also got to know when to pull back and say, wait a minute, should I be using that pot? Should I be using that ingredients? Do I need to use a different technique? Okay. You need to know when to do those two things. I also think it's important that we need to be honest with ourselves and say our time and attention is being focused on these lists, right? Whether it's some sort of goal or whatever the case may be. You say, I got these lists, right? I want to lose weight. I want to finish that thing. I want to get that certification. I want to, take that vacation, whatever the case may be, right? You got those lists. And I think what happens is that we get so locked in that list that we forget that there's a more important list back there. So if we say that we're talking 2D, is I'm walking through the list trying to get the list done. Then you say, okay, I'm going to pull myself back. Now I'm 3D. Saying, okay, is this list, is this list still good? Are these steps still good? Can I rearrange this list? Can I modify this list? But I think to go a step forward, to get the 4D step, we got to say, wait a minute. Do I even need to give my time and attention to this list right now? Because there might be a more important list behind me that I haven't paid attention to. And if I'm not paying attention to it, it might honestly be getting in my way, or I might be holding myself back. So you not only need to refine your lists, but you need to ask yourself, do I even need to pay attention to that list right now? In my experience, some of the most important things that I should have been doing, I found reasons not to. And it's easy to say, well, I can't do that today. I got to get to work. I can't do that today. I got that appointment. I can't do that today. Something else came up. Okay, maybe. But if you invent a reason to truly not work on what counts and to not work on what matters, I would make an argument that you're probably just distracting yourself. And you're distracting yourself in a way that's going to limit yourself. It's not unlike an addiction or a substance or a chemical. You're using it to keep yourself busy, to keep your mind occupied, to keep your mind locked on something. Saying, okay, I'm working on this cooking list, right? Okay, how do I cook this dish? And then maybe that doesn't work right and you got to pull back from the list and say, okay, let's modify it, let's adjust it. But again, should you even be on that list in the first place? Because I think it's easy for us to get stuck in what we're doing. And it's easy to say, okay, I need to devote this amount of time and this amount of effort towards that list. And I'm in the process of refining that list. But it's, if you lose focus and say, wait a minute, that list in the corner, that list behind me, that list in that drawer, the list of dealing with my trauma, the list of dealing with my past, the list of confronting people, the list of setting boundaries, the list of truly exploring, the list of truly healing. If we always keep that in the back seat, we're never really going to get anywhere. So they say money can't buy happiness. I'm going to probably agree with that. Not having enough money is god awful. But if you haven't fixed what truly needs fixing, all the money in the world ain't going to mean nothing. If anything, you're probably just going to get more destructive, whether it might be today or later. So what I'm encouraging all of us to do here is to have that 2D, that 3D, and that 4D, to have the 2D list, the 2D perspective to say, okay, I need to get through this sequence, and that's it. I'm just zoomed in on that. That's my 2D perspective. Got a piece of paper. We can take a 3D perspective to say, okay, do we need to adjust this list? Do I need different tools? Do I need to rearrange this list? But I think the most important one is to take that 4D perspective to say, okay, is this even what I need to focus my time on? Because I think for most of us, we find ways to occupy ourselves. We also find ways to invent reasons to rationalize things. So we owe it to ourselves to honestly look at everything that's going on, to honestly look at all the lists we have, even the ones that have been stashed away in the back for the longest. We owe it to ourselves to say, okay, does this need my attention? Does this need my time? It might. And it might be the most important list you need to work on. I'm not saying throw out your lists. I'm not saying don't focus on what you need to focus on. If you need to be up somewhere at some point, yes, you need to focus on that. That needs your time and attention. But there's also the big important things that exist within you always that need just as much time and attention. So you need to take that 4D perspective. You need to pull back completely, pull back from all your lists, and just say which ones need my focus, which ones need my time, which ones need my attention. Once you get to that point where you can start honestly prioritizing what you're doing, and you can start giving things equal time for equal measure and equal weight, you're not going to feel so scattered. You're actually going to feel more put together because you prioritized things. You're giving the most time and weight to what needs it. And it might be something that might not be blossoming or blooming until 20 years from now. Sometimes the most important things take the most time to get done. And if you say, I'm trying to be somewhere 20 years from now, you need to take those steps today. And you need to keep taking those steps. Those aren't the only steps. There's a shit ton of steps you need to take today outside of that. Like I said, if you got to be somewhere, you got to be somewhere. But at the same time, if you're trying to be somewhere particular 20 years from now, you need to make sure that what you're doing today is in alignment with that. Otherwise, you're just waking up just for the fuck of it. And you're going to work for the hell of it. That's not good. That's not good. We need to be moving towards a goal. You need to have a worthy goal. You need to have a profound mission. You need to have lifelong ambitions that are going to propel you through this time and through this space so that you end up where you want to be and you're happy where you ended up and you're okay with what you did to get there. Do you got really anything to complain about at that point? Is there anything to hold you back? Is there anything keeping you up at night? To saying, I got where I wanted to be, I'm happy I'm here, and I'm okay with how I got here. I'm not saying you're not going to stub your toe. I'm not saying people aren't going to break your heart. But when it's all said and done, if you're in that position, if you're in that place, is there really anything to be regretful for? Is there anything to be mournful for or sorrowful for? I mean, you can miss the people that are no longer with you, but you're also going to be able to accept the joy you had with them. So, focus on your lists, refine your lists, maximize your lists, but also at the same time, focus on the lists that you need to focus on. Just because you're working through a list right now doesn't mean that's the most important list on your plate. You might need, there's probably a more important list sitting in that drawer that you don't want to confront. I would encourage you to confront it. It might be scary. It might take a lot of effort out of you. But the growth and value you're going to get out of it is... I don't know if you're going to find more growth and more value than dealing with the list that you don't want to deal with. I think if you're only going after the things that already feel good and the things that already bring you the sunshine and rainbows, I think you're limiting yourself. I think there's actually a lot more good of you that is actually in that drawer that you don't want to confront. So, prioritize your lists.